What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my AEW Collision audio review for October 28th, 2023. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great weekend so far. This is an on-site report from the episode last night, emanating from Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. A good show overall, kind of made by the main event, obviously. That was the best match in the entire show. One of the best matches from the company all year. And this company's had a lot of great matches, including on Collision. I'm not sure if it was better than the FTR, Jay White, Juice Robinson tag team matches, specifically that first one that went like 60 minutes. But it's in that conversation, no doubt. And I knew having to go to this show for that main event alone would make this worthwhile, and it did. And it was a good show otherwise. It was solid with a couple different matches, championship matches, a surprise TV title match from Ring of Honor, a pretty good women's title match as well. The Friday Night Fight, I think is what they called it, between Hikaru Shida and Abadon. A lot of costumes across the matches and backstage segments, setting up stuff for future episodes and AEW programming, stuff like that. So it was a pretty good show overall, like I said, made by that main event, which was just tremendous and well worth going out of your way to see if you did not catch it. For the AEW World Championship between MJF and Kenny Omega. And I'll get to my thoughts on why they gave it away on the show. Was it a mistake giving it away on the show? The match itself, blah, blah, blah. A little bit later on as we go through here. But it's funny, they were actually in the same arena, in the same venue, exactly 1 year ago for a Rampage show. So I don't know if it was intentional that they'd be back in the exact same arena 1 year later now for Collision. But it's like around this time of year they find themselves in the Northeast. 2 years ago, I was at a Dynamite in, was it 2 years ago? Not exactly 2 years ago, but almost exactly, on the 27th of October, 2021, in Boston for a show that was actually supposed to be in April of 2020 before COVID hit, and they bumped it to October of 2021. So that show, and then a year ago, Rampage on the exact same date and arena, and then a year later, also a Mohegan Sun, the exact same date and arena on October 28th, this time for Collision. So I guess if they'll be back next year, it's going to be on a Monday. They don't run any shows on a Monday as of now anyway, so I guess if they find themselves back in the area around Halloween time in the Northeast, I'll probably be there. Odds are I'll probably be there. So they opened the show with Jay White taking on AR Fox. Jay White still sporting the AEW World Championship belt, walking around with the title, having stolen it from MJF a couple of weeks ago. I guess Tony Khan doesn't step in from a storyline standpoint, Tony Khan appeared before the crowd, before the show got going, per usual. If you've ever been to an AEW show, you know that. They also taped some Ring of Honor matches beforehand. I didn't stick around for the Ring of Honor TV tapings this time. I did last time I went to Collision a couple of months ago. Didn't even bother this time. I just left, got ice cream, and took off with Alexis. But anyway, so they opened the show with Jay White, and speaking of Tony Khan, you would think that he would step in as the storyline boss and say, listen, Jay White, you got to give the champion his belt back. We got a big championship main event tonight. Theoretically, if Kenny Omega won that match on this show for the championship, he would have been walking around with no championship either, because Jay White still was in possession of the actual belt. So that was a little silly, but otherwise I understand the storyline they're going for, and if MJF can win that 8-man tag team match coming up on Dynamite next week, then he will have his belt back. So we'll see if he can get it back by winning that match. But Jay White was in action here against Connecticut's own AR Fox, who's a great babyface. The problem is that his in-ring style is befitting of a babyface. I thought he was doing really good work as a heel alongside Swerve Strickland and the Mogul Embassy, or Mogul Affiliates, whatever they're calling it, from a couple of months ago, and then he got kicked out because he couldn't compete at All In. They rushed the angle, kicked him out of the group. Maybe that might have been the end game the entire time anyway. I wouldn't think so, because they turned him heel for a literal month. They turned him heel for a literal month and then moved on. And we really haven't seen Fox on TV much since. He's great, and the crowd liked him here. He got the crowd into the match with a lot of his aerial offense. He's very exciting to watch. The problem is that he kind of fits in with the rest of the roster as just being another guy, when all he can really do is flips as a babyface. Not a lot of character development beyond that. And we saw that with him as a heel, but they kind of flushed that down the toilet when they turned him back into a babyface soon after. So that's the issue. But I thought they had a fun match. Jay White won. Pretty basic stuff. They stayed around ringside as the Guns had a match immediately against the Boys from Dalton Castle's little group. They won pretty much immediately. So a nice showcase for them before they face MJF and a partner. They did advertise MJF and a partner, not just MJF on his own. It would be a little dumb. I mean, the Righteous I like a lot. They didn't really build them up all that much before they lost to MJF, and that was a last-minute thing, too. Back at WrestleDream, they didn't really have time to introduce a partner for MJF on that show. They do now for MJF. It could be Samoa Joe. He offered his services to MJF a couple days ago. He did again here backstage on the same show. So it's possible that it ends up being Samoa Joe. Maybe he cost MJF the championships and kind of stakes his claim of the World Championship for a little bit later on. He already has, but that will make MJF want to defend against him that much more for at some point down the road. But that will not be a handicap match, apparently. I mean, I guess it could end up being a handicap match, but they're advertising a partner for MJF. We still don't know who it is. They're leaning towards Samoa Joe, it looks like, but it might just end up being a surprise or someone else we're not thinking of. But a pretty decisive win here for the Guns. We have the AEW Women's World Championship defended in this match between Hikaru Shida and Abadon. Now, listen, I don't give a fuck about Abadon. She's been around for years now. I don't think she's, not that she's awful, but I think the character sucks. And it's pretty evident to me that they only dust them off for the Halloween season, which is exactly what they did 2 years ago when I was at Boston for Dynamite. They didn't tape it on Dynamite. They taped it for Rampage that Friday. A Friday night fight between, and it wasn't Shida at the time, it was Britt Baker for the World Championship, and she lost that one as well. I actually left halfway during the match. I didn't give a shit. This was better, though. Shida coming out with a Resident Evil costume, Abadon also having a pretty cool costume as well. They actually had a pretty good match, given the trick or street fight rules, essentially is what this was. And it's not very something that AEW does often, but I think it's something they could do more of. And I'm not saying, more sports entertainment nonsense, but, for a Halloween show, to me, it made sense. It was harmless. It wasn't the main event. Who gives a shit? Abadon wasn't winning the championship, but they went in there, had a quality match. The crowd popped huge. The biggest pop in the entire show up to this point was Abadon getting the pumpkin put on their head and Shida knocking it off, kicking them in the head, and winning the match. So that was the finish. Crowd popped huge. It was a fun match for what it was. Better than I thought it would be, considering I don't really care about Abadon as a challenger, and Shida feels like a filler champion before they take the belt off of her and put it on someone else. Toni Storm did emerge halfway through or afterward to kind of taunt Shida. She's getting the next title shot, which is why it made it more obvious Abadon was not winning the championship here, because Toni Storm is next in line at Full Gear. Toni Storm is not facing Abadon for that belt. They could very well put the belt back on Toni Storm. She is the best thing going in that entire division right now. And Sheeta's doing good work. I love Chris Statlander. She's doing great work as well. But the most over woman out of anyone in that division right now is, not Chris Statlander, but rather Toni Storm with her character stuff. She's just fantastic. So it does feel like they're playing hot potato with the belt right now. And I'm not sure putting it back on Storm is the answer, but it is an option come Full Gear. We had another championship match right after the Ring of Honor World Television Championship being defended. Samoa Joe taking on Rhett Titus, who got an entrance during the break, as did most people on this show. Pretty quick and decisive win here for Samoa Joe. Rhett Titus hardly a threat. We never see him on AEW TV. We don't even see him on Ring of Honor TV. No one watches Ring of Honor TV aside from me, I guess, but he's not even really on Ring of Honor TV. He's just someone they dust off once in a while, bring in for the occasional enhancement match, and that's it. And that's exactly what this was. It was a straightforward squash for Samoa Joe. All it really needed to be. Samoa Joe is just so fucking over. He was probably... MJF was pretty over. Joe is up there, though. This crowd absolutely loves Samoa Joe. And that's a recurring highlight through every single show I've seen him on, being there in attendance, watching on TV, whatever it might be. Joe is always over. He's a great heel. He can be a great babyface as well. People fucking love Samoa Joe, which is why it makes me happy that he finds himself back in the AEW World Championship mix. I would love for him to be the one to take that belt from MJF. I'm not convinced that it's going to happen, but it is a possibility. He's just great. So hopefully he wraps up his run soon as Ring of Honor World Television Champion. Maybe they don't want him losing it before he gets another world title shot. I'm not sure. He's eaten a number of losses in the last year in AEW. Not really in Ring of Honor, I don't think, but definitely in AEW he has, so it's not like he's undefeated. They're probably keeping the belt on him until he breaks Jay Lethal's record, which I don't think he's done already, but he's definitely coming close within the next, maybe a week or two. And then by then he will have broken the record, and maybe then they can move on. But this was exactly what it needed to be, though. And like I said, he did confront MJF backstage a little bit later on before the main event, further teasing him as another challenger for MJF at some point. Ricky Starks, one half of the AEW World Tag Team Champions, taking on Dax Harwood here. They kind of moved away from the FTR Starks and Big Bill program. I had seen a report, I don't know if it was from Fightful or another source, but they had said the plan was to take the titles off FTR and have them chase Starks and Bill for the belts. But that doesn't appear to be the case. They did rekindle the rivalry here, but they kind of moved away from it after the surprise title change a few weeks ago. And now they're moving on to FTR and House of Black, who we're seen standing in the crowd for the entire duration of this match. My fucking feet would be killing me, but they had a good match here. Starks won with a pile driver, quality contest, not the most exciting affair, but it was very well wrestled. Good work from both guys. Starks wins as he should have. So House of Black, lights go out again. They enter the ring. They confront FTR alongside Starks and Big Bill. They don't want the tag team titles, apparently. They just want fucking FTR. Okay, at least it gets them on TV, whatever. And then making their return to TV for the first time in a number of months, La Faction Ingobernable, rather. Rush's group. Andrade was not out there. And that was because they needed a 5-on-5. They didn't want to give any group the advantage. They wanted it to be even. And throwing Andrade out there would have given them the advantage. Because it was FTR, and then Rush, Dralistico, and Preston Vance against all of House of Black, not Julia Hart. But there are 3 members, and Starks and Bill. So they might be setting up a 10-man tag, but I also thought the same thing a few weeks ago when they set up, seemingly, which they didn't, Copeland, I think it was Christian, Luchasaurus, Bill, and Starks. And then it was Copeland, FTR, and Darby Allin maybe, but we didn't end up getting that match. We probably won't at this point. They moved away from that. So I don't know what's going on there. It looks like they're setting up a lot of different multi-man matches, but we're not getting any of them. Not that they really care to, and AEW does a lot of multi-team matches, multi-people matches, but it's possible. So anyway, it looks like the Bryan Danielson injury that we found out about here on the show, that was another thing worth noting from this episode. I mean, obviously I didn't hear the commentary, but they did say via the Claudio video they aired on the show that Danielson apparently on Wednesday, that injury was legit. It looked like it was faked, and that they ended the show awkwardly on purpose. They were probably going to end the show with Danielson and Okada facing off again, likely setting up a match for Wrestle Kingdom in a couple months. That might be in jeopardy now. I mean, the idea now, what they're saying is that he broke his orbital bone, and I think something else, maybe his nose. I think it was his orbital bone, and he needs surgery, and he will be out for at least until the end of the year. I don't know if they said the rest of the year or the end of the year, because there's a big difference there. Wrestle Kingdom is literally at the beginning of 2024. So if he's out for the rest of the year, I can't imagine he's out for 2 months and then is back by January 4th. I mean, I guess he could be. They thought the same thing earlier this year when he got hurt over the summer, and then he was back in time for All Out a lot quicker than people thought. And he's had a fun little run since then, but he's only been back for literally less than 2 months, and he's already hurt again. I mean, the guy's made of fucking glass. He gets hurt constantly. And that's the price you pay for working a hard style that he does. He has amazing matches, he goes hard, but he also gets hurt a lot, and he's getting older, which is probably part of the reason why he wants to retire soon from full-time active competition, because if he's getting hurt constantly, it's going to affect his family time and his time with his kids and stuff like that. So hopefully he is back soon. Hopefully the Okada match isn't in jeopardy for the proposed Wrestle Kingdom match, probably on January 4th. I can't imagine they would do that match in AEW again. You would think New Japan would want dibs on the rematch. It would be awesome to have him in the Tokyo Dome. I don't really watch New Japan unless it's Wrestle Kingdom, so I would certainly watch that match, and you can expect Okada to get his win back. But that is the injury update on Danielson. He is legitimately hurt, which sucks. That's a blow to the roster. In his absence, hopefully they can have some other people rise up, because it felt like he was kind of a central figure on the show for the time he was back for. Now that Punk's gone, Danielson's out hurt, maybe some other people can rise up, because we got an Omega and MJF match on the show, but they're not regulars on Collision, and they haven't been ever. I mean, MJF's been in action on the show a handful of times, but he's not a regular on the show. At least he wasn't until now, so maybe we'll see going forward. But we had Claudio taking on Hot Sauce Tracy Williams, and they didn't even get out Tracy Williams' full introduction here, because before the match or the introduction was even concluded, Claudio attacked him out of nowhere. So Claudio hit him with the uppercut in the corner before the in-ring introduction was even over, attacks him, beats him in under 60 seconds, wins the match quickly as he should have. It's a pretty dominant win here for Claudio. He'll be challenging Orange Cassidy on Wednesday's Dynamite for the AEW International Championship. I would say put the belt on Claudio, and I wouldn't be mad if they did, but it's like, what are they doing here with the International Championship? They took it off Cassidy, who held it for almost a year, to put it on Moxley, who then lost it to Phoenix, who then lost it back to Cassidy. I know Phoenix, I think, may be hurt. They were always going to have him drop it regardless, because I think he's also hurt. Moxley got hurt, so injuries are obviously a factor. But why was Cassidy the one to beat Phoenix for it when it could have easily just been Claudio? Claudio could have easily, or Takeshita or someone like that, could have easily been the one to beat Phoenix. Why did it have to be Cassidy? I mean, he already held the belt for a year. It feels like a step back to have him back in the same division. He dominated for an entire year. I am looking forward to Cassidy and Claudio, though. I think they'll have a quality match. Then obviously the main event itself, the AEW World Championship on the line. MJF defending against Kenny Omega. Excellent match here. They got a ton of time, the entire final 30 minutes, which made me think at a certain point, They didn't say, because usually when they go to draws, they have the announcer say, 5 minutes remaining, 10 minutes remaining. It might have been a 60-minute time limit, which they were never going to do because the match didn't start at the beginning of the show or in the middle of the show. But still, that was definitely a possibility. I was thinking they would have it end in a draw. They did not. They ended up going out there, having a kind of a slow start, and it started out as a pretty good match. Once it kicked up in the second half, I would say, was really when it went up a notch and became an excellent match. Just two clashing of styles, including MJF, who isn't really known for doing aerial stuff, but he did not a beautifully executed, but I appreciate the attempt, of a moonsault over the top rope to Omega to the outside at one point, halfway through, which the crowd was like, holy shit, how could he do that? Among other things, Callis did get involved halfway through. He had the screwdriver. He attempted to interfere. Didn't really pan out, though. Obviously, Omega was never going to win the championship, but they kind of made you think at a few different points maybe he will win the title. He had MJF in the one-winged angel before, MJF got out of it. And then after that, he was able to escape it again, reverse it, roll up Omega for the victory, and retain the champion. Actually, he didn't even roll him up. It was a pretty decisive win. And the match went on for at least a few more minutes after the Callis interference. It didn't actually cost him the win. It was one of those things, I think similar to the Ospreay match with Jericho earlier, back at All In earlier this year, that Callis, I don't think, caused the finish, but he did play a factor halfway through, and Omega can blame his loss here and failing to become the champion again on Callis. And MJF ended up winning pretty much clean on his own, getting endorsed by Omega afterward. They went off the air. I didn't see the various wrestlers watching MJF as the show went off the air because I was there. They didn't show that in the arena. But apparently they showed Wardlow watching the TV. They showed Hobbs watching the TV. They showed, not Jay White. It was Hobbs, Wardlow, and I think Samoa Joe as well. So he's got a lot of people gunning for him right now in that AEW World Championship. But yeah, after the show went off the air, they had Omega and MJF pretty much exchange pleasantries and kind of go back and forth and putting each other over. Blah, blah, blah. But this was an amazing match, though. This was a great main event. Lived up to the billing as being a dream match. Dream match I use loosely. But it's funny, they said last week, Tony Khan was like, we got a dream match going on in Collision this week. And it was like friggin' Bryan Danielson and Andrade. Like a match I saw on SmackDown 5 years ago, and it was great then. It was great last week. It's not a dream match. This, to me, by AEW standards, feels more like a dream match. A match that we haven't seen before. And Omega was one of those few guys in AEW, one of the few top guys, that MJF had no interaction with whatsoever. Maybe in a tag team match, maybe. But I think for the most part, he's kind of stayed away from Omega. He's beaten and faced everyone else. He's faced and beaten Chris Jericho. He's faced the Bucks before. He's faced Adam Page before. Pretty much all of the elite guys except for Omega. He even faced and beat Cody Rhodes a few years ago. And Cody Rhodes never got his win back because he left the company. But Cody Rhodes, CM Punk, MJF already feuded with. Adam Cole just recently beat him in All In. Samoa Joe. Doesn't really feel like there was a whole lot of people left as far as the already established top guys, Ricky Starks being another one that he's already beaten. A lot of guys that he's already faced and beaten. Omega was one of those few that kind of eluded him in the one match they hadn't done in the 4 or 5 years of AEW. They did it here. Now, people were upset online coming into the match. Why would they give this away in front of less than 4,000 people in friggin' Connecticut on a Collision show with very little hype? I mean, if it was a random match, I would agree. But the whole point of the match, and they probably would have done it on Dynamite, but the whole point of the match was that this was the last chance for MJF's record to be broken as the AEW World Champion. If the record was broken on Saturday, they probably would have done the match on Rampage. If the record was being broken on a Thursday, they would have done the match on Dynamite. But they had the option to do it here because the next time that we'll see MJF, unless he gets hurt in the next 4 days, would be Dynamite, and by then the record will be broken, and then the record's broken on Halloween itself, I believe. So this was their last chance to do it. It was a great attraction for Collision, which has kind of been, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of forgotten about in recent weeks. Collision's just a solid show. Nothing really must-see about it. That was the case for this episode as well. I liked being there. It was fun being there. It was a fine show. Didn't really miss much beyond the main event. If you missed the main event, you got to go out of your way to see it. The rest of the show was fine, serviceable. Not really worth going out of your way to see if you missed it. But they needed a big attraction for the show. The streak was on the line. MJF's title didn't really feel all that in jeopardy, but they did kind of tease you with a couple different near falls, which were greatly executed at certain points down the stretch. And it was a great match, so I can't really complain. And it's also refreshing too, because I feel like Tony Khan has had this tendency, and it's not really a knock on the guy as a booker, although there's a lot of criticisms that could be made in that department. But he's also had the tendency to bring people in and then kind of wait to do a lot of different matches, to the point where we don't get to see a lot of great matches before that person inevitably gets hurt or leaves. Like with Cody Rhodes, I mean, there were a lot more matches they could have done with Cody Rhodes before he left, but like, I'm thinking of like CM Punk. Both times, actually, both during the first run and the second run. Thankfully, we got the Punk-Joe feud during the second run, because it would have been a bummer if they never interacted at all during CM Punk's entire tenure in AEW. But like, we never got to see Punk and Danielson again. Not that I'm just saying give it away on Dynamite and give away every big Punk match, but thankfully we got Punk and MJF, we got Punk and Page, and Punk and all these other people, and Punk and Moxley before he inevitably, blew up, basically, and got himself fired from the company. You can't wait to do certain dream matches. I mean, I'm almost 99, maybe I don't know about 95, but at least 90% confident MJF is staying in AEW when his contract expires in January, if he hasn't already re-signed, which I'm kind of feeling like he already has, and they're probably just kayfabing it for the storyline of like, oh, he might leave as champion like CM Punk in 2011, blah, blah, blah. But I'm glad we're getting these matches, and again, it wasn't a random match. It made sense with the streak ending in a couple of days, with the MJF breaking the record for longest reigning AEW World Champion. It made sense. It wasn't some random match they gave away on TV. That they can do dream matches like that on occasion, like Danielson and Andrade. Not a dream match, but again, that wasn't a big storyline. They're probably never going to feud in AEW. So why not do that match in AEW when you have the chance before Andrade leaves? That's an option. That's exactly what I'm talking about. If and when people like Andrade leave for WWE or Malachi Black or whoever it might be, at least you can say you did this match. Like, that's why I would like to see Omega and Andrade at some point on TV, because again, there's a chance Andrade might leave whenever his contract expires, and that could be as early as this spring. He came in the spring of 2021. He might have signed a 3-year deal, and he could be gone as soon as the spring of 2024. But anyway, I'm glad they did the match. It was a great match, and they're doing a good job of keeping the championship picture interesting right now with people like Omega chasing and other names in the title picture. Because listen, the title picture was one of the better things going on the show for a while when they had Adam Cole in the mix with MJF, and they were doing that long-term storytelling with the two. But then Cole gets hurt, and that kind of throws a wrench into their plans. Now, Cole is still kind of on the show, but let's be honest, it's not the same at all. And that was their kind of central storyline. With Cole getting hurt, that was a big blow to the roster. But they've had all these people step up from Omega, now Joe, which is great, because he was already in the title picture, then he lost, and now he's back in it, which is great. You got Wardlow being brought back into the mix, Hobbs being brought back into the mix. That's cool. They're doing something of note with all these guys. It's cool to see. You can say the product's cold right now, the AEW attendance is down, blah, blah, blah. But what they're doing with the World Championship, they've kind of corrected course with the title following the Cole injury, and they're doing a good job of them. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from here, and I'm also looking forward to Jay White and MJF at Full Gear coming up in a few weeks. And that was my review of AEW Collision for October 28th, 2023. Thank you guys for checking out my review. I appreciate it. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Probably back with a Collision audio review next week, so keep an eye out for that as well. I know Crown Jewel is next week, but that's during the day, so I'll catch up on Collision at some point, have a review either up on Sunday or next Monday. So have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.